why do companies and candidates actually use recruiters? And what are their alternatives? Let's look at companies first. So companies can attract candidates to join them in multiple ways. First of all, let's separate small companies and large companies, because their recruitment processes tend to differ slightly. A lot of large companies, what they've actually done is outsource their entire recruitment process to third parties. They'll often be called recruitment process outsourcing companies, or you may hear the abbreviation RPOs. And these are effectively recruitment consultancies that work in-house at those companies. So they're not actually employees of the companies. We sometimes have a challenging relationship with those businesses because they are in effect our competition, but they work on site. And the companies are paying them to make their recruitment more efficient and cut their costs. They do still need to use external agencies, so they will build relationships with us, but it's often a slightly more challenging relationship than if you're dealing with the company directly. Now, large companies will use RPOs and outsource their recruitment to give them a better control over the costs of the staff related to hiring recruitment and the recruitment activities themselves. I'll just explain that to you in a lot more detail. So a company that has its own internal recruiters are a fixed cost. Those employees cost the same whether the company is hiring or whether it's not, whether it's reducing or its headcount or growing its headcount. If they've outsourced their recruitment to an RPO, the RPO has a responsibility to staff up their recruitment function if the company is growing, but also to reduce the staff down to a skeletal level if they're cutting back their headcount. And the company only pays for the amount of staff it requires to grow or shrink. So they have a lot more control over the cost base of their HR function. The RPO will also provide them with a guarantee of the costs that when it successfully hires the candidates. So the company putting the recruitment through the RPO first makes a lot of sense because it will reduce its cost of hiring. There are additional skill sets that the RPO probably can't find, or they may not be able to find every candidate that the company is looking for, so they will still use third parties. That's where we come in. Companies can also advertise directly. Now, large companies and small companies will advertise directly, i.e. they will post adverts out to job boards or social media sites to get people to apply to them directly. What's the pro and the con of this? First of all, for the pro, it's a lot cheaper than using recruitment companies. We will charge a lot more than it costs to put out an advert. Why do we charge more? We deliver a lot more than an advert will. What happens when you put out an advert, and we experience this ourselves, is you get a huge amount of applications in some cases, or you get none in others. But when you get a large amount of applications, a lot of them are irrelevant, a lot of them will call, and a lot of them will waste a lot of time. Now, for the hiring managers themselves, they certainly don't want to be taking those applicants to the job directly into their own inboxes, because that will take them away from doing their own work. And the HR or the RPO recruiters will have a huge volume of applicants for a large variety of jobs. So this is a huge time-sapping process. There are companies that will do it, and people will often try that first because it appears like a quick fix, but it will also drain a huge amount of time away from them. Also, managing the rest of the process themselves, if they don't have an RPO or an internal recruiter, will take a huge amount of time. Organising the interviews, preparing people for interviews, delivering the offers, all takes time from the line managers actually doing their main job. So where we come in is we save time, and actually we save money, because if those line managers aren't doing their main job and they're spending time doing recruiting, it's slowing down the productivity of their department and the success of the business, and it's costing them money. This is an intangible cost. A lot of people get to the point where they're very frustrated with it and would prefer to have external help from a recruiter. Companies will also use their own networks. RPOs and internal recruitment functions and hiring managers themselves would ideally prefer to hire someone who is known to someone else within the business and recommended. First of all, this is very low cost, and they don't have to spend any money whatsoever on reaching out to contacts. They can do it over email or social media. And the person is known. So generally speaking, employers will only recommend someone who they think will do a good job and is going to reflect well on them. So it's a low risk hire for the company. Occasionally, companies will even provide a bounty to the employee who refers people. This increases the risk of the quality of the hire slightly, but also it encourages people to think more. They would pay more than the cost of an advert, but less than the cost of a recruitment fee to an employee who refers another person to the company who ultimately joins. This is also a preferred method of a lot of small companies. So if you're dealing with digital companies or fintech companies or small, fast growth businesses, they would largely prefer to hire from their network first if possible, rather than using a recruiter or advertising directly. However, there comes a point where their own personal networks reach capacity. There are no more people that they can tap that bring the skill sets that they want to the business. So that creates a challenge. Another downside of this is the equivalent of recruitment inbreeding. There becomes a point where if everybody is known to everyone, they're the same type of people with the same type of backgrounds and the same type of influences, you don't get new ideas or diversity brought to the business. And this can become damaging to a point, particularly for small companies, where you need game changers to continue to innovate in the business. Again, that's where we can come in. We can bring talent from completely outside of their network with new ideas, fresh approaches, and new experiences. And this is where, again, we can add value and people will be happy to pay the fee. Even in large companies, this is important. Departments can get stuck and they can become insular. And to have an external person from a completely different background join can be a complete game changer for a department within a business as well as a whole business. Again, this makes them happy to pay a fee. So why would a company use a recruiter, large company or small company? Well, let's look at some of the advantages now, because believe it or not, we do provide quite a few. So first of all, a main complaint is that we're too expensive. And a common answer to that one is, well, if a professional is expensive, then first try an amateur. It will cost you a lot more, it will cost you a lot longer time, and it'll be a huge amount more effort if you use an amateur or you try and do a job like this yourself, rather than if you use a recruiter. We are actually a time-saving and money-saving alternative, because the individuals themselves will lose productivity and it'll become a much more complicated process. We add value to most clients in streamlining the process. When they give us an opportunity and a job spec to work on, a lot of times we can advise on the availability of candidates and how they need to change the job to make it appealing. We can also enhance their brand. So if they're going to market and it's a company that's in a difficult situation or doesn't have a brilliant brand, then we can sell that company better than the internal recruiters in a lot of cases, and better than the company can sell themselves. And just to qualify that slightly, I don't mean that we can sell better than the company. However, we can approach candidates and get them interested in the company because we don't have just that one option. Let me give you an example. If it was an energy company that had had bad press due to some of its practices, it might not be the first choice of a candidate to join the company, because it could be related to pollution, or it could be related to links to Russia, or any other type of scenario where the candidate might initially not be gravitating towards the company. If you're Google or Facebook, you don't have these problems, but a lot of other companies do. So we can talk to a candidate who has a skill set that the company wants, and we can approach them regarding a multitude of opportunities. Once we've spoken to the candidate and got them interested, we can then sell them the opportunity at the energy business or the business that's got any other difficulties with their brand, and get them to give it a chance. If the brand contacts them directly, they'll have an immediate opinion and it'll be a yes or a no. So we can overcome objections being a third party that the company themselves might not be able to overcome. And this gives us an advantage. A lot of times we find candidates that tell us they've been approached by the company directly, but they haven't gone forward to an interview. And we can overcome those objections when they would have immediately rejected the company directly. Another angle that we can bring to a company is that we can give them market intelligence that they wouldn't ordinarily be able to get themselves. So when they've created a job spec and they're looking to sell themselves in a particular way, as a third party, we can advise them how that compares directly to their competitors. That's information they wouldn't ordinarily be able to get themselves. So we can position the business, their structure, the specifics of the role compared to other companies in the market. And we can also tell them whether that's going to be attractive to candidates and what trends we're seeing on the market at the moment. It may be that we advise them ultimately to change the way they structure their department or their job specs or approach the interview process. That's another element that we can really add value with. If we have candidates going through the interview process and we're getting specific feedback, we can relay that to the client so they can change the way that they do things. A lot of times, a client or a particular hiring manager within a company isn't an expert recruiter. They may only hire 1, 2 or 3 people a year. So they're not professionals at interviewing, and they're not professionals at selling their company. A lot of the skill sets that we deal with, the people that are hiring them are very technical, and they're not great at sales. So they do technical interviews and they don't position their business as best as they can. And we can either advise them how to do that, or we can do it for them. So we're able to position the business with the feedback that we get better than a lot of times they can do themselves, because a lot of candidates wouldn't give that feedback honestly to the company directly, whereas they will to us because we're a third party that's advising them as well as advising the company. So we can improve the experience for the candidate, again enhancing their brand. We can improve the conversion ratio for the company, increasing their likelihood of being able to hire the candidate that they want. And that ability to give feedback to both sides can add value all the way throughout the process. We'll come on to that in a lot more detail when we talk about interview prep and debriefing for candidates and clients. Another point where we can add value, which is often contentious for the companies themselves, is in salary negotiations. Now, a lot of time the perception from the companies is that we will increase the salary as high as possible because that's how we increase our fee. However, this just isn't the case in reality, and when you get close to your clients and have a relationship, they'll begin to understand this even more. We want to get the best possible deal for the candidate and the client so that we get repeat business. Now, if a client's coming in too low on a salary and they're just not going to secure the candidate they want, and we're honest about it and the client has a relationship with us, we can advise them to move that little bit more if it's possible to secure the candidate. We would bear in mind that we can give them information about the candidate's situation and their other offers that they might have coming, and also counter offers in the company they're in right now. So if we're valued by the client and we have a genuine relationship, we can secure them the candidate they want at the best possible price, making sure they don't underpitch the offer or pay an excessive amount that they didn't really need to pay. Now, you might think it's good for us if they pay an amount that we didn't need to pay, but then if they find out at any point that they didn't need to pay that amount or they overpaid compared to the market, they're less likely to want to do repeat business with us. So we're trying to get the exact right amount to ensure that they secure the candidate that they want, they're not overpaying compared to the market, and they're not overpaying compared to the people they have internally, which can also create problems. So we add value to them by making sure they get the right salary and the right compensation package to secure the right candidate. Securing that right candidate is where we also provide value, because we will source from multiple different areas, different geographies, and every route possible in order to get the candidate. Their internal team may be slightly more narrow in where they search, or less of an expert in the specific vertical market. So why do candidates use recruitment companies? First up, I'd advise you, just to get comfortable with your new profession, to Google recruiters are and then see what the most searched for terms are. You will find they're not particularly complimentary. There'll be words along the lines of scum, awful, useless and parasites. Now, just to put your mind at rest slightly, you might also want to Google things like lawyers are and accountants are, and you'll see that generally speaking, people aren't particularly complimentary about any professional that provides a service. However, they have those search for terms for a reason, in that generally speaking, the interaction people have with recruiters doesn't create a positive experience. And to put this into context, we're providing a service to the client, and the client pays our fee, so we can't help every single person who applies to a job that we're advertising or that we talk to about a job. If you look at the ratios of our conversion from the number of calls that we make through to placing a single candidate, there's an awful lot more people that we can't help to get to the one that we can. Now, we have to make sure that the people that we can help, that are candidates that could go on to be clients, we provide a great service to. Otherwise, everybody is hating us rather than a small portion of people also loving us compared to a large portion of people that we can't help. So those people are crucial to get right. Now, how do we minimize the impact on everyone else? Well, first of all, we have to make sure our interactions with people are very clear, what we can and what we can't do for them. And the people that we can help, we have to provide that awesome service to. we can provide them with a whole heap of things that will make their job searching experience a lot better and go a lot smoother. Now, if you apply to a company directly for a job, you're going to maybe get invited to an interview. You won't really know any details about who you're seeing, what their background is, what the recruitment process is going to be like. You won't even know if the job description you've applied for is an accurate representation of the role. You certainly won't have any assistance when it comes to negotiating your salary or comparing it to any other opportunities you might see in the market. This is all the things that we can provide as a recruiter to a candidate. So if they're working in our specialist vertical market, we should be able to give them comprehensive advice of multiple opportunities that are available to them, what the culture is like and how it differs in all those different companies, what the opportunity is like in each of those companies, and compare like for like. Ideally, we'd be working with a candidate exclusively, and we would be controlling the interview processes of all of those companies that they're interviewing with. But even if they're not, and even if they're recruiting, going to interviews through other recruiters, we've positioned our service correctly, they will come to us for advice on which opportunity is best. Again, taking the long-term view, if another opportunity they have is way better than the one that we do, we want to convert that candidate into a client, and putting the roles into perspective honestly is very important. Obviously also we want to sell our opportunities, and ideally they're the best ones, but sometimes they're not. Retaining the relationship with the candidate is sometimes more important than getting the immediate fee, because you could get multiple fees further down the line. Hard selling a candidate can sometimes be worse than giving them the correct advice. Now, what other advice can we provide them through the recruitment process? So if we know our clients well, and again we'll talk about this a lot more when we do interview preparation and debrief, we can talk them through exactly how to execute the interview process to give them the best possible chance at getting the job. Now what you'll learn through the training process is it isn't the best candidate for the job that gets the job. It's the person who's best prepared for the interviews and executes the best interview process that gets the job. It's very important to distinguish. Our role is to prepare the candidate as well as we can, and the client as well as we can, and constantly smooth the process out. Every candidate will come out of every interview with concerns and objections. It's our job to handle those if we can, minimize them, and make sure they're happy to continue through the process. If a candidate was interviewing with a company themselves, they would have no one to communicate those concerns with other than their loved ones. They don't always get the best advice from people who are self-interested or are jealous or have many other motivations for talking them in or out of a job. Whereas we're a third party, we are motivated to help them get a job because that's how we earn a fee. However, we can provide balanced advice, or at least we can convince them that we can. With the clients as well, they're not sure exactly how each candidate feels, and we can relay this to them. If the client has concerns, we can dial down those concerns or put things into perspective. From a candidate's perspective, when they get to the end of the interview, they're going to have to negotiate an offer. They're going to have to get the best possible salary for themselves. They don't know whether to push too hard or not enough. If they haven't got representation from a recruiter and a consultant that knows the company well, they're less likely to get the best possible offer and still secure the role. They might ask for too much, they might ask for too little, but they're unlikely to get it exactly right because they're not doing this process over and over again. Whereas we are, and we can help them to get the best possible package and secure the best deal. Again, just as the advice for the clients, we want to get this just right because we're hoping that this candidate will turn into a client and then hire people through us. If they realise through that process that other people are coming into that company after them on better packages and we actually didn't get the best possible deal for them, they won't want to deal with us in the future. Equally, if we push too hard and therefore they don't get the offer, they also won't want to deal with us in the future. So getting this advice right is in everybody's interest in the deal. And we can do this typically better than the candidate can do it themselves. There are also other elements of a package the candidate might not even know it's possible for them to negotiate. And if we deal with that client repeatedly, we will know all the buttons that we can press to get the best possible compromise so everyone is happy. There's also an education process around the rest of the market. We can talk through companies that they might think have a great reputation, but for their particular skill set in that department in the business, it may be not so good. All of these things we can bring to the table to advise a candidate. And you've got to remember that for a candidate, there is absolutely no charge for any of this service. So that whilst there may be a greater proportion of people that we can't help, for the ones that we can, we're providing incredible career advice, great opportunities, and it costs them nothing. So really, what we want to try and achieve here is that when people Google recruiters at 20R, they don't get the same result as when they just Google recruiters are. We need to hold ourselves to a higher standard for the people that we can help than the rest of the industry. So we're changing those perspectives one person at a time.